On this week's episode, we're going to talk about Magnussen's removal from Haas and what that means for the driver market, plus look ahead to the Hungarian GP. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Back of the Grid. Slightly belated, slightly later than usual, but we are not professionals and this is real life got in the way, I'm afraid. But yeah, we're going to talk about the little bits of news that we've had since the British GP. Mainly it's about Kevin Magnussen and what that looks like for the drivers market. A few storylines for the Hungarian GP, and then, yeah, we'll do some predictions and some inbox for the GP itself. So, Chris, do you want to kick us off with the detail of the Magnussen situation?
Yeah, I mean, if we'd done our normal Monday night recording, we wouldn't have had any news to talk about. So real life getting in the way has helped us slightly this week. But yeah, so Haas and Kevin Magnussen have announced that they are parting company at the end of this year. Kind of as we've expected for a while, really. I don't think many people expected him to retain that seat, given how the driver market is and kind of where he's sat, especially in comparison to Hulkenberg this last season. So yeah, completely new line for Haas next year. As we already know, Ollie Behrman's getting one of the two seats. It opens the door for Ocon to move to Haas. That's been the kind of prevailing rumour over the last couple of weeks since his departure from Alpine was announced. I don't know, what do we think of Ocon as a Haas driver, as a choice for them?
It will turn out to be mediocre at best, probably. Like I can see why they'd do it. I can see why they'd go for him, just given they want someone that's got a bit of experience on the grid, probably, and he's an okay pair of hands, but I don't think he'll be able to help them develop the car. Like, look at the Alpine right now. I don't think he'll be able to help Behrman. Look at every other teammate he's ever been teammates with. So, other than being okay, I don't see what he offers them. I think they'd be much better going for either, I don't know, something like Bottas maybe, where try and get Bottas, because obviously there's no confirmation about what Bottas is doing at Audi Sauber over the coming future. Now, I know Bottas has sort of maybe dipped a little bit in most people's estimations, but there'll at least be things that Behrman can learn from him, and I think there'll be things that Bottas can bring to the team
Absolutely.
that Ocon can't, but that's probably just... Yeah, I don't know where else they could go, to be honest, because I can't see Carlos Sainz going there, that's for sure.
Yeah, like they definitely don't have Sainz money. I mean, who else is kind of likely to be available? I should say Bottas is the name that I would personally look at first. Zhou is going to be on the market as well, in all likelihood. Obviously, that's... I don't know if Zhou and a rookie paired together would be a particularly exciting driver lineup. Yeah. It depends on how much they want to lean towards the money coming in, I suppose. And then, yeah, like, you could try and poach a Tsunoda. Well, Tsunoda's already got a new contract as well. Ricciardo's not going to move there. So, yeah, like, not a ton of other options. I suppose
seen a
Perez?
Comical... Yeah, I was just about to say, I've just seen a comical comment in the Discord saying Perez might be free. So, good timing.
I mean, yeah, possibly. But I suppose they need to lock someone down while they can. So, yeah, Ocon... I think we're expecting... It might even be announced by the time you're listening to this podcast, but I think we're expecting it before the summer break.
There's a few rumoury type things around, isn't there, that it basically already a done deal, and that's why they've announced the Magnussen thing first.
Yeah, so I almost expected it to be like later the same day they'd announced it kind of thing, but that doesn't seem to have happened.
Yeah, so there's... I think even from the sounds of it, from what Discord was saying earlier, even like BBC have hinted towards the fact that it looks like Ocon's basically pushed Magnussen out of the seat, but
yes. I mean, Haas is a much more attractive seat than it was a year or two ago.
Very
already.
true.
Like, they've made big gains in this year anyway. They've just extended their technical partnership with Ferrari until 2028, so that means engine supply, and then they buy all the bits they're allowed to in the regulations, basically. So they get some of their suspension parts, like brake ducts, various bits and bobs. Basically everything the rules allow them to buy from Ferrari, they do. They use Ferrari's wind tunnel, and I think they've got like a corner of the factory in Maranello where they get like technical support and stuff like that.
Who needs it? They're doing better than Ferrari in some cases.
Well, yeah. the leading Ferrari-powered car at times this season.
Yeah.
There's also rumours that Haas are in talks with Toyota around a partnership as well. Initially, this was like a lot of people saying, oh my God, Toyota are coming back kind of thing. And it doesn't seem that it's going to be that. It's more, again, like a kind of technical partnership, access to some of Toyota's personnel, more technical support, that kind of thing, which is quite interesting. I don't know if that's maybe a way of Toyota just kind of like dipping their toe back into Formula One to kind of test the waters a little bit.
I think potentially, and I'm all here for it. Like, I'd love to see more manufacturers essentially be properly involved, because that's what, I mean, we reached a point in F1 with it. We also reached a point in World Endurance Series with it, for example. World Endurance reached a point where you had the same team winning year after year, and nobody could be like bothered essentially to try and compete with them, because anyone coming in new to that would just have to play a huge catch up with Toyota. And look at where we're at now in comparison. Like, yes, exactly. Fair enough, we've had Ferrari win Le Mans in back-to-back years, but the rest of the season, that's just one race in isolation. That's like saying, oh, the same person won Monaco both years in the last 2 seasons, but the rest of the season has like variance in it. And I mean, fair enough, we've got that to some degree at the minute, but it would be nice to have more engine variance, because obviously at the minute you've got Mercedes doing well and McLaren doing well, but they're both running the same power unit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a good point, actually. We'll take a quick dip into the inbox to kind of lead us into the next bit, I suppose. Sarah writes in to say, with Ocon to Haas looking likely, who do you think will end up in the second seat at Sauber/Audi? Because it seems like they've really tried to get Sainz, and it seems like he's kind of shunned that idea now.
I'm trying to work out where Sainz wants to go at this point. That's the thing for me. Where does he actually want to go?
Over Silverstone weekend, there was stuff in the media that, like, I think we mentioned this last week, that like a lot of journalists were like ready for the Sainz to Williams announcement, and then it didn't happen. James Vell seems to be kind of losing a bit of patience there, and I think he said that something along the lines of, they don't want a driver that's just going to use Williams as a stepping stone to another team or a stopgap until a better deal comes up. Like, he wants someone who's there to be part of the project, and that's maybe not what Sainz is looking for. Now Sainz is supposedly been having talks with Alpine, following Flavio Briatore returning, and then there's also the news that Renault are potentially looking at stopping making power units, so the Alpine team, or whatever they would be named at that point in time, potentially switching to Mercedes power for 2026. Toto Wolff has said that's something they'd be open to, because obviously Aston Martin are moving from Mercedes to Honda in 2026. So from a Mercedes development point of view, having more cars running your engine is going to generate you more data. So they're interested in that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see why Briatore going to a team is something that makes you want to join it. Is where I sort of stand on that. And wasn't it the son of an ex-driver who was at the centre of the whole thing last time? Just saying.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Sainz and Briatore have worked together in the past. And I know Sainz was at Renault, but that was after Briatore had gone.
Yeah, that would have been way after.
Yeah, so I don't know if they've ever crossed paths in the past. But
yeah, do you know what it is? Do you know what that is? I can tell you exactly what the reason for that is. That is Carlos Sainz being Carlos Sainz and his like supreme desire to emulate everything Fernando Alonso has ever done. And working at that team with Briatore is peak Alonso. So that's all Carlos Sainz sees. He's like, it's the dream. Like, oh, come on, Carlos, think about it, man. I bet that's where his head. If there's any truth to it, and he is genuinely interested in that as a seat, I'd say that is the reason why.
Yeah, it's like, what, a Spanish driver at Renault being run by Flavio Briatore? That sounds like a recipe for a world championship.
Yeah.
I mean, do we think at this point Sainz is just holding out on the off chance Red Bull do want him?
Maybe. With the Perez situation, I wouldn't be surprised if he, or his people have had conversations with the team at Red Bull. I think that's, in terms of what was available to him at the start of the season, when the whole Hamilton thing got announced and we knew he wasn't going to be at Ferrari, the most like serious contender type seat that's even been debatable has been Perez at Red Bull, hasn't it? Like,
yeah,
you know, I don't think there's much question around the replacement for Mercedes for Hamilton at Mercedes. I don't think that Carlos would really fit into their plan long term, because but maybe that changes now because Mercedes are back on form.
Yeah,
maybe there's more of a long term thing there, but I think Mercedes have really put their eggs in the Antonelli basket, and the problem with that then leaves that nobody wants to drive for them in the interim if Antonelli doesn't for any reason. So
yeah, like, I think at most Antonelli is going to do like either another season in F2 or like a season apprenticeship at like a Williams maybe. But again, I don't think James Vales wants to necessarily go down that route. I suppose it depends how much of a discount Mercedes give them on the engines, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But to go back to the original question, we still have this seat open at Sauber/Audi next to Hulkenberg. Obviously, right now they've got Bottas and Zhou. Pierre is still their reserve driver as well. I mean, at this point in time, would they not just be better off sticking with Bottas?
Yeah, potentially.
Like a Bottas and Hulkenberg lineup sounds pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, although I think that does show a little bit of a discredit, to be fair, because he's been there around Bottas for the most part. I don't think there's anything that Zhou has done that warrants picking Bottas over him, if I'm totally honest. I think the only thing you might find is like you'd go for the longevity, the guy that's been around the sport longest, which would lead you towards Bottas.
Yeah.
But I think if you put in someone that's already experienced and been around the sport a long time and been in different teams and all that kind of stuff in the car, like Hulkenberg, you don't necessarily need two of that. So replacing Bottas with Hulkenberg and keeping Zhou doesn't necessarily sound like a completely terrible idea for Sauber, I don't think. But then that would mean that the Bottas to Haas scenario might be the one that's on, I think.
Yeah, or the Bottas to Williams, I guess. I think I'm trying to look at what the qualifying gap is between the... It's like just shy of 4 tenths between Bottas and Zhou this season so far, which is one of the bigger gaps on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. But I also don't think the car's particularly up to much either. So
it's really not. It's absolutely terrible.
Like, if I'd have to go dig it out, but I think last year Zhou did a lot more for his credit than maybe is happening at the minute, and that is probably. But then again, so has Bottas in the past. Like, I don't think either of those drivers are performing at their best, and that is purely down to where that car is. Like, it's possibly the worst car on the grid at the minute.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
If you take the season as an entirety, at least, I would say that it could be the worst car on the grid overall, because every other team has had sniffs at points or got points. They're still struggling in that regard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, take it as it is. Like, yeah, Bottas is at least out qualifying it, but it's still not necessarily leading to results, is it? It's still not leading to points finishes. So, yeah.
Or is this the time to give Porsche a chance? Like,
maybe. Yeah.
The poor guy's been promised a seat for about the last 2 or 3 seasons, forever. I think. Yeah, and now what's happened to him in IndyCar with McLaren just dumping him unceremoniously as well? Like, the guy deserves a break. So, I feel like, because obviously Williams still have a seat to fill as well. I feel like if Bottas does go to Williams, maybe they will take a punt on Porsche for a year, see how he gets on.
Yeah. Out of interest, I'm just wondering, we talked about that gap there with Zhou and Valtteri. Which way round is that gap?
In Valtteri's favour. He's been the quicker qualifier.
Because what I find that interesting about that is Zhou has as good, if not better, results in races. Because Zhou sits above him in the standings. That's what sort of caught my attention, because technically Valtteri is 21st out of 20 drivers or whatever it is, because of Ollie Behrman's appearance in the Ferrari. So I think there's something, like, again, I think it comes back to how poor the car is. Valtteri's clearly able to get something better out of it one lap pace. I think Zhou's maybe able to get a little bit more consistency out of it race pace, but yeah, it's a kind of garbage either way.
I mean, Bottas has always been a very good qualifier anyway as well.
Yeah,
so
true.
Yeah. And then we mentioned Williams. If not Bottas and not Sainz, I'm not really sure where Williams go.
Theo Porchet.
Yeah, that'd be, imagine. Unless they dip into the rookie market, but to drop Sargent for a rookie seems.
What has become very underwhelming about this whole driver market thing is there's nobody particularly, I mean, no disrespect to the people that are available, but there's no one particularly exciting available. That has quite greatly lowered the excitement and the interest around the driver market. Like, it's, oh, wait, Kevin Magnussen is no longer signed at Haas. Like, where's he going to go? Like, no disrespect to Kevin Magnussen, is a much better driver than I ever will be, but who actually cares? Like, who's going, oh my God, where will Kevin Magnussen go? Nobody really cares. Like,
it's only really Sainz left, isn't it? At this
and
point?
I think even any kind of hype around where will Sainz go is faded away, because it's been so long and there's been so many other driver moves ahead of his that I mean, I'm a Sainz hype guy at the best of times, but even I've lost interest now. I'm just like, just pick a seat, Carlos. Just sign for someone. Just for the sake of all of us, just please sign for someone. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. I mean, looking into, like, F2, like, a lot of the top guys are Red Bull juniors. Except for them. Like, you've got Paul Aaron, who used to be part of the Mercedes program, but he's not anymore. Bortoletto is a McLaren junior. Like, Jack Crawford, what's he part of? He's an Aston Martin development driver. So, there's not a whole lot for Williams to pick from, really. So,
no,
it'll be interesting where they end up with. Then, we've mentioned Mercedes, probably still Antonelli, but they seem in no rush to actually make that decision.
No.
And then, obviously, all this talk around the get-out clauses in Perez's contract, like, that's not come out of nowhere. Like, that is being talked about for a reason, and you've got people within the team who are mentioning his performances. Like, this might not be even a 2025 thing. This could be a mid-season thing. But, like, what they do with that situation, I really don't know. Like, you've got Tsunoda and Ricciardo at RB. On paper, based on performance, you should probably pick Tsunoda, but I just really don't see a route where Tsunoda ends up at Red Bull.
Yeah, I feel like Danny Rick's almost too ingrained in that team long term for them to go somewhere else straight away. And I feel like if they went with Danny Rick, Red Bull would feel like they're at least getting a known quantity. And to be brutally honest with you, part of me would kind of be interested to see that, to see if there is any legitimacy in the whole thing of, you know, Danny Rick just needs a pointy car like what Max needs. Because
like
we saw Vettel, for example, move away from that team, not have a car like that for years, and struggle for the most part to get performance out of it. We've seen Danny Rick leave that team and go to a few other teams and struggle to get performance out of cars for whatever reason. Maybe there's some drivers that can only drive a car that's on the limit, and that is it. Some drivers prefer it, some drivers need it.
If it happens, it really will be the final test and the final chance for Ricciardo, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think at best they'd like give him a season contract. At best, they'd give him the remainder. Say they did it mid-season, they'd give him the remainder of this season to get kind of to grips with it, and then he'd get next season as like the last season in the formula, I guess, isn't it? Before we change anything significant, to prove his worth. And if he's not there, they'll just bring somebody else in for 2026.
Yeah, like give him a season and a half. You've got Lawson ready to step into RB. And then if that doesn't work out, you've got like multiple feeder series drivers you can draft in as well. Like Hajar's looking really good this season. They've got Owasa over in Super Formula I could bring over. They're not short of options. It's just, I don't even think it's if they drop Perez at this point. I think it's when. Like, I just can't see a world in which Perez can turn it around. Like, unless he wins the next two races leading into the summer break. But I just can't see a world where that's going to happen.
Yeah, if anyone thinks Perez is going to win a race this season, I would say that they're crazy.
Like, the guy can barely get Q1 at the moment.
I might just find out what the gambling websites have as odds for Perez winning a race and just throw a $5 on it for fun.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if it doesn't come in, it's a $5. If it does come in, I'll be a millionaire. I can't see the fact that the tone of the team has gone downhill for him in the last few races.
Shifted, hasn't it?
They might have given him a contract, but it's very clear that they're making it publicly known that there's ways that they don't have to maintain that contract if certain things continue.
Exactly.
So, yeah, scary times if your name's Sergio Perez, I think.
Mm-hmm. Should we move on to Hungary?
Yeah, let's do some storylines for Hungary. I'll run through these because you've done all the contract talk. So,
all yours.
Top of the board for Hungary, for Budapest, is: do we think Mercedes are properly back? They've obviously won the last two races. Both drivers have won those races as well. It's not like it's just one driver on form. The car appears to be on form. And you go into a circuit where Mercedes usually do okay. Hamilton specifically does okay. Pretty well, actually. It was, other than outside of Silverstone, this is his second most winning track at the moment, isn't it? And that's only because he's literally just won in Silverstone. He was tied for them both, I think.
Yeah, he was.
If I remember right. So if he did pull off a win here, then he would go back to being those two are tied as his most winning circuit. So there's a lot of potential there for both the team and the driver involved. Do we think that they are properly back? How do you see it?
It's looking good. Like, because even in the last couple of years when they've had a pretty rubbish car, they've still done well at this track. It's always suited the kind of car Mercedes build. And they seem to have been really on the pace. I mean, if you're if you really look at it, they still were not the fastest car at either of the last two races that they won. They were still probably third fastest.
They were handed a win in Silverstone by McLaren's strategy errors, I would say.
Yeah, and then sort of handed Austria by incidents.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But still, they put themselves in the position to take advantage of those things, and you've got to do that to win races. So yeah, I think they could well be like right on the pace this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be outright challenging for a win because, like you say, there's a couple of events that have played into their hands and played to their favour that have gotten them into those positions in the first place. But I think they'll at least be pushing for a podium spot. They'll be keeping McLaren honest and possibly even Verstappen to some degree. Which I guess brings me nicely on to the next point we'd got, which is, can Red Bull mount any kind of recovery when they've now gone through a spell where they clearly don't appear to be the quickest? They are bringing an upgrade, or tying into something else. Can McLaren continue to keep eking performance out of the car, but also put together a weekend that comes together properly for strategy and pull another victory out for either member of the team? Because they were both in contention in Silverstone if it weren't for a couple of bad decisions strategy-wise at each side of the garage. So, yeah, essentially, can Red Bull claw anything back and put Max back on top of the podium? Or will McLaren be too close to them despite upgrades?
Red Bull need this upgrade to do the business, I think, because they've been properly caught up and closed in on. I think it's going to be so tight between the three this weekend, honestly.
It's hard to call.
Really hard to call.
A bit nervous about the fact that we've still got to make predictions and we're still this close to the race weekend. We normally have the excuse of, we do this on a Monday, blah, 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 blah. We don't have that this week. So I don't know where I'm going to go in my predictions. I still don't. We're 2 minutes away from it, and I don't know where I'm going to go. So that should be fun in 2 minutes' time. In terms of other storylines, Ferrari, torrid time for both of them in reality. Sainz was probably lucky to be able to hold on to the pack as he did in Silverstone. Leclerc has not been anywhere since his win in Monaco. What do they need to do to turn it around? Can they do it here? We've seen Ferraris go well here before in the past, but can they pull it back at a circuit like this?
I'm struggling with much faith for Ferrari to do anything before the summer break. I haven't seen any talk of them having any upgrades coming. Doesn't mean that they're not, but I've certainly not seen any talk about big upgrade packages. Their drop off this season has just been crazy. From being a contender at the start, well, not a contender, but being up there at the start, to winning Monaco, to then just plummeting ever since.
Yeah, it's not great for a team of that caliber,
really
is it? Not at all. And then we've talked about Perez already. We'll not beat that dead horse, but
no.
Sauber, I mentioned it earlier. They're the only team that haven't scored points this season now, and this is a track where they've generally done okay in the past. Do we think it's an opportunity for them to get into the mix and maybe get a result that's inside the top 10?
Because last year they had definitely one, possibly both cars into Q3, and they were I don't know if they actually scored points. They were in the fight. It's a track they've done well at before. They'll definitely need to be targeting this as a track they can score points this year, because the way they're performing, there's not going to be many tracks they can. It's kind of like the Williams of a few years ago, where it's they pre-identified maybe 3 or 4 tracks where it's okay, we need to throw everything at this because this is where we can maybe score some points.
Yeah. So this brings us to the last point, which is not team specific, but is more general circuit specific, and that is weather related, because at the moment Budapest's weather cycle is pretty crazy. So they've gone from mad heat waves, which, you know, I know some places in the world get a lot hotter than 30 plus degrees Celsius, but depending on where you are in the world, that can be considered quite hot.
Yeah.
So they've gone from that to essentially torrential storms, which, by the way, if people haven't seen, have basically destroyed the McLaren motorhome again.
Yeah.
So within weeks of them repairing it from the Barcelona fires, it's now had the roof ripped off by a storm in Budapest. So no luck for the team surrounding the motorhomes. But yeah, Hungary's a very interesting place when it comes to weather, because, as both you and I can stand testament to, you can go from being in a mid 30 degrees Celsius heat wave of sorts, dryness, to absolute torrential rain in minutes. Yeah. And I think probably what doesn't help is the way that it sits in the little basin that it sits in, because that rain almost kind of creeps up on the circuit and then maybe is held back a little bit, and then once it does break through, it's there and it's in the bowl and it doesn't stop. And it's a very interesting place for weather. And the circuit is looking like, for the most part, it will be a very hot weekend, which might cause issues for tyres. But also, I look at previous races here, and I wouldn't discount there just being a downpour at some point. Even if it's overnight, like Saturday looks to be the most cloud covered of the days as it stands currently. This is on Thursday night we're talking about this, so still a couple of days away. But Saturday is looking like the most overcast day of the three, and all it takes is for a downpour on Saturday night for a green track to be there Sunday morning, which is not at all out of question for that part of the world at this time of year. I've been there multiple times. I know you have, Chris, and you can go to bed at 30-something degrees, baking hot, wake up in the middle of the night, and it is absolutely hammering it down. You wake up the next morning to yet more 30-degree clear skies, and you would be forgiven for not realising it's thrown it down with rain overnight. It's it can happen so quickly and so intensely, and I think it'll be a big factor. But I don't necessarily think we'll see rain like we have in the last couple of. I don't necessarily think we'll see that, but I think the heat and then a clean circuit that you'll get because of the rain and things like that, if it does come overnight, will probably play a big factor in teams having to refine the form on a fresh track, because we know that has quite an impact for the drivers over a weekend when you get rain midway through the weekend and then suddenly the track's not as it was when you last left it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything to add there before we do Pred? So
no, I think that's all covered. We can stop delaying and do our predictions.
Right, yeah, let's do them. So for those of you who don't know, we essentially go through and predict 5 things for the race weekend. So we'll do fastest qualifier, the winner overall, first DNF, number of finishes, and a random driver's finishing position. This is open to everyone, so head to backofthegrid.com if you want to get involved. It's worth registering on there and submitting your predictions for each of these 5 things, because if you do get 5 out of 5 correct, you win a prize. But you get to listen to us make fools out of ourselves doing ours first. So, Chris, who do you think will be fastest in Q3?
I'm going to go with George Russell.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think the Mercedes is going to be very good this weekend. Russell has generally been the better qualifier of the pair this season so far, so I'm going to lean his way.
Okay. I'm going to be a little bit curveball in a similar regard, I think, and I'm going to go with Piastri.
I like that.
I think he's shown over multiple races why McLaren and Alpine were fighting over him. He's shown that he can stick with Norris, and I think it's a bit of a, like they always say, it's a driver's circuit here. Like, it's one that the drivers like and enjoy to get the best out of the car and things like that. A a lot of them always likened it to like a bit of a giant go-kart track, and I think that suits someone like Piastri, where he can just dial into a bit of natural talent, I guess. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Piastri. The win, however, I am going to be really, really boring and say return to form for Max Verstappen.
I want to stay firmly on the Mercedes hype train, and I'm going to say Hamilton.
Oh, hello. So you're going for a similar result to Silverstone then?
Pretty much,
a Russell pole with a Hamilton win. Interesting. What about first DNF?
You get a lot of turn one incidents here. You
do. Bottas likes to go bowling here.
He sure does. Maybe a Zhou. Let's go for Zhou.
Okay. I'm going to go someone a little bit more in the middle of the pack rather than at the back of it. So do you know what? Because if between me saying these words and turn one, Ocon is in any way announced for Haas, Ocon, and he will unironically hurl himself into the side of Hülkenberg's car or something. Like, he will hurl himself into one of the other Haases. I'm saying it first. Like, I feel like this is my moment to get something. You know when I said similar with Perez in Monaco, and I was like,
you looked at it with the context.
Yeah, it's going to be Perez. He's going to get desperate because he's not going to qualify well. He's going to throw it up someone in turn one, and it's going to end in tears. I was this close to that. I'm going with something similar here. Ocon, something will get announced about him and Haas between now and turn one, and he will plough into the side of another Haas. Well, not another Haas because he won't be in one, but he will plough into one of the Haases. Number of finishes, on that note, I'm going to go with 17 because I think Ocon will wipe himself and maybe somebody else out, and then there'll just be another random one somewhere through the race. So I'm going to go 17.
I will. Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind as well, actually. That feels right. I'm going to copy you and also.
It's Old Faithful, isn't it? We always call 17. And then the random driver for this week is Danny Ricciardo. So how do you feel about that one?
Just have a look at where he's been in recent races. Daniel Ricciardo.
He's got better for him. He's had a couple of points finishes over the last 3 or 4 races because he had points in Austria and points in Canada.
Yes. Sounds. Yes, you're right. Austria and Canada.
And it was only Tsunoda in the points last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, last time out.
He's probably averaging around a 12th to 13th over the season. I'm going to have him. I'll have him 12th. I think just outside the points probably feels about right.
I'll go one slightly better then and give him 11th. And a Red Bull contract to boot. No, that is it for our predictions. Yeah, that is definitely one way to earn it. Is finish just outside the points. Finish above Perez, basically, and you can have a contract. They should just put that out to the grid in general. Just finish above Perez, and you win a chance for the contract. But yeah, that is it for us. So as I said before, if you want to head to backofthegrid.com, you can make your predictions there. We'll round out this week's episode with a little stop into the inbox.
Keep me saying now. But stay out.
Box.
Hey, man.
Do you want to go with the first one?
Yeah, go on. Wes says, hey man, how do they pick tyre compounds? You'd think they would have given the teams this weekend's tyre compounds for Silverstone and vice versa. It seems that a harder compound would handle the heat better and softer the cooler weather.
I mean, generally, it's based on a lot of things, weather definitely being a factor, but also like surface type and latitudinal. I think we should longitudinal and latitudinal. Yeah, like latitudinal force on the tires. So there's nothing like particularly high speed, that's needing high grip at a circuit like Budapest. So it's all like low and mid-speed corners. So you tend to find that a circuit like Silverstone will definitely have tougher compounds because there's so much lateral force going through Maggots and Beckett's, for example. The load on the tyres through corners like that, or Cops, where you're essentially full throttle or it's a mild lift, the load through the tyres, that's where they tend to obviously go with higher compounds. Heat 100% is definitely a factor, but
yeah,
I think that the reason for differences between a Silverstone and a Hungaroring, like what we're seeing now, is because you don't get those same extremes of load at Hungaroring. It's a lot easier on the tyres in that regard. And stereotypically, Hungaroring did get to become a bit of a boring race because nobody ever needed to stop. Also doesn't help there's a narrow circuit. So, yeah, I think taking the softer compound is one of those strategy calls to essentially try and force more stops because it's not a high deg circuit. Ultimately, it's not a high degradation circuit. That might change with the heat for sure. We might see people struggling to keep the soft alive a long time, but I'm kind of excited for that. Like that's a whole part of the sport, I guess, for me in that sense. Is you're given some compounds and you have to essentially decide which work for you and also make them last.
Yeah, it's very much a thermal degradation circuit, not anything else. So, yeah, I think this is the same set of tyres I used for the last year and possibly the year before, actually.
I don't believe they changed it between seasons. So.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense. But as you say, like, it's such as a circuit, it puts so little energy into the tyres, like they don't really need to worry about tyre life, so the softer the better. Probably is the right choice for the circuit.
And then another one we've got from this week is Eugene Mister. This should be a fun one. I pre-read this one. So Eugene says, what do you think to a program called F1 Dads that basically follows Jos Verstappen, Anthony Hamilton and Carlos Sainz Sr. and all the other dads around as they conduct their cloak and dagger games around their respective sons' F1 careers?
Oh God. I mean, if the three of them had to interact with each other, that sounds like all of their worst nightmare. I don't think they'd even get on particularly well.
Yeah. I mean, we probably have this to some degree anyway, and it's called Drive to Survive.
Yeah, I almost wonder if like Drive to Survive is going to lean more towards them than the actual drivers in the coming season.
Although, to be fair, Netflix have started doing the NFL fans out there will probably be aware of this, but last year they had the quarterback series where it focused on like the life of a quarterback in the NFL. But then this year they've put out a wide receiver series where it focuses on the life of a wide receiver in the NFL. So it would be quite entertaining to have some sort of spin-off from Drive to Survive where it's like, you know, engineers to survive or dads to survive. You just got all these like different things. But yeah, I think, to be fair, I think you get enough of that anyway. I definitely get enough of Carlos Sainz Sr. when they're like do a whole episode where it's just the two of them sat in Spain eating brunch and talking about cars. Like I don't need any more than one. I love the guys, but I don't necessarily want to sit and just watch them have lunch together like for a whole episode. So, but yeah, it would be interesting to sort of see what the dads do get up to outside of the paddock that relates to their sons' careers, respectively. You've also got to, I think you've also got to throw it's Adam Norris in it, isn't it now? Like I know he's not really a motorsport dad. Like obviously Anthony represented Lewis all the way through his career. Jos drove, and Carlos Sainz Sr. was a rally driver. So like they've all got like fairly decent motorsport connections at this point. Whereas Adam Norris just, I guess, brought Lando through and supported him, but he's always had like separate managers, I think, hasn't he? So
yeah,
maybe he's not quite a motorsport dad like the other three, but even still, I think it'd be interesting to throw him into the mix. And then I'm sure everyone wants to see Piastri's mum be part of this because she's like hysterical on social media. So I think maybe it should just be F1 parents, not necessarily restricted to just F1 dads, if we were going to do it.
Yeah, Piastri's mum is becoming like the star of the season this year.
Definitely. But that rounds us off for this week. So a little bit of a shorter one, I think, overall, just because there wasn't a lot of news, and we're this close to the Hungarian GP already. But go away and enjoy it. We'll be back next week to review it and also look ahead to... Oh, it's Austria, not Austria, Belgium, right?
Yes, I keep getting
it's so
mixed up
crazy having to say this, but yeah. So we'll be back next week to review Hungary whilst also previewing Spa. That's a weird thing to be doing at the end of July, but that is what we'll be doing. So join us then for that. If you are following us on any of the social medias, feel free to send in questions for the inbox through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of that. If you're watching here on YouTube, you can also leave a comment in the video below, and we will obviously get back to that. We read through them all. We'll try and reply to anything general throughout the week. But yeah, if you've got a question that's specific for the next episode, feel free to leave it there. Please remember to give us a like and a subscribe wherever you are, YouTube or anywhere else. It always helps the show. And yeah, we'll be back next week to go through everything else. So that's goodbye from us.
Bye.